So welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that first session. We've got a bit of a change of tact and change of angle now. And I want to share a few stories with you about my time at Atlassian and some of the things we've been trying. So I want to share with you a little bit of a secret. I joined Atlassian about 5 years ago. We were about 500 people, a couple of locations, kind of 40,000 customers, and everything just worked. And I remember getting to the end of my first 90 days and having joined this company that in Australia had just won Best Place to Work 2 years in a row. And I sat down with my boss and I said, I've got a bit of a confession. I hate it here. And he's like, what? Like, we're the best place to work? I'm like, I'm really not enjoying it. And what I realized was, as a program manager, which was my role at the time, I'd spent years firefighting. As a program manager, I'd spent years waiting for things to go wrong. I had my superhero cape. I would fly in, put the fire out, take the plaudits, take the credit, and then fly out again. Is anyone here a self-confessed firefighter? Okay, now this is when you check how honest the room is. Most firefighters are also fire starters. We don't always like to admit it, but every now and then, if you go too long without a fire, you're like, well, I might not have a job anymore, so oops, just going to start a quick fire. Now, the reason I didn't like my job in the first 90 days at Atlassian was because there were no fires to put out. And I was about to start creating some, and thankfully, my boss at the time, who's the VP of Engineering, interjected. And he said to me, Dom, I don't want you to put out fires. He said, I never want to be famous for standing on stage talking about how big we are. That is not something I ever want to be famous for. He said, I only want us to be famous for being awesome, for having teams that have high agility, teams that are autonomous and empowered and mastery and love their work and do the best work of their life every day. And I was like, yeah! And he's like, go and do that. Waved his hands and said, as we scale, how do we stay awesome? How do we stay as a great place to work? And so I did what all good ex-consultants would do. I rang all my ex-consultant friends, got some really nice PowerPoint decks, absolutely full of bullshit. Not a single fact in there. Lots of charts and Venn diagrams, but nothing usable. And then I went through an airport lounge, bought a few books. They were brilliant. If I could go in a time machine back to 1984, which were when most of the management theory and leadership theory that we kind of rely on was written. And I'm looking at the world I'm working in, these smart people with the growth mindset that want to do the best work of their life, and these old ways of working weren't going to work for us. So we created our own way of working. We'd actually run with it for a couple of years, and then we open sourced it just over a year ago. So Jay introduced one part of that to you before, this idea of a health monitor, a reflective exercise for teams to assess how they work. And what I'm going to talk you through today is a little bit more about those practices. So why is this important? So I'm the token non-technologist in Atlassian. I told a little bit of a lie in my interview to get the job at Atlassian. I got asked if I was a coder, and I said yes. And I got asked if I like games, because apparently engineers play a lot of games. And I said yes. Now, what I didn't do was actually further those answers anymore. So when I started, and my boss said to me, what's your favorite coding language? And I explained that at the age of 9, I had a Spectrum 48K, and I could do 10:\blue, and the outside of the screen would flash blue. And he actually thought I was joking. He realized I wasn't joking when he quizzed me about gaming, and apparently he was hoping for Magic the Gathering. Is that something? Or like World of Warcraft. That's what he thought I meant by gaming. And I was like, no, I'm on like level 492 of Candy Crush. And I've never paid for a power-up. That's how good I am at Candy Crush. And he's been forever disappointed in me since. But part of my role at Atlassian is saying, tools are one way of doing things, but how do we improve the way we work? And actually, when we went out to Atlassians, and this won't be a surprise to you, and we said to this large cohort of engineers we've got building awesome products for you every day, and we said to them, what makes great teams? We kind of got this Tourette's-like response where they just all started shouting tools. Tools, 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 or tools. And what we realized was that a fool with a tool is still a fool. The problem is you've just made them faster. So you've got to take a step back from being highly reliant on tools to deliver great outcomes for you and say, how can we empower these people to alter the way they work? human to human, how do we work effectively? When you look at the last 100 years, and actually the priority has been how we work efficiently, we've been trying to go fast. We've now realized that staying relevant and being effective is way more important. And so we start on this journey, and then we suddenly realize that it aligns magically to our mission. If you think about unleashing the potential in every team, we can't just do that through tools. We have to evolve the way we work in our organizations. Not only the teams we work within, but the other teams in our organizations we're reliant on, and other organizations and partners that we work with. And so we actually documented and produced the Atlassian Team Playbook, and just over a year ago, we shared that externally. An interesting thing about the playbook is we do not run two separate versions. We have over 390 teams in Atlassian. When Jay mentioned before 2,500 people, we have over 390 active teams. Those teams every single day use the same version of the playbook that we've shared with our entire customers globally to actually evolve the way they work. Because if it's good enough for us, it's good enough for you and vice versa. And so it's not static. It constantly changes and evolves as we change the way we work. So the first component is this health monitor. Think of the analogy of a fitness instructor. Depending on which one of us goes to a fitness instructor, they're going to put us through the same drills, but I'm going to get a different set of exercises to you. The health monitor is the fitness instructor putting you through the drills. What we've then done is documented plays, which are the exercises we do to build that mental muscle. Not physical muscle, but mental muscle as we get better at how we work. So I'm going to, instead of taking you through the health monitor, which I can talk on for hours, trust me, I actually want to take you through 3 specific plays that we find our teams run regularly, and it makes them better teams. And that's because I don't want you to leave here thinking that you know more about how teams work. I want to leave here with ideas of what you can do to make your teams better. Are you up for that? Awesome. There's like 4 awake people. Those cookies really worked. I don't know what's in there, but everyone's like, yeah. So when you think about these, we've built them as recipe cards. And the idea behind this is we want anyone to be able to use these and follow them. Originally, when we built the playbook, we had this kind of weird view that there'd be millions of projects and program managers around the world espousing this wonderful idea. And then we realized it'd be much better if we made every single Atlassian more intelligent at running teams. So we've democratized the way this works. Just like Jamie Oliver, if I buy the Jamie Oliver 30-minute Magic Meals book, I do not create meals like Jamie Oliver. But I can follow those recipes and have a good go. What I like to do and what's important for you with these is to adapt these to your environment. If you copy, cut, and paste our way of working and try and plug that in, it's not going to work. It's 80% baked. What you need to do is adapt it and evolve it for your environment. So let's dive straight in. Who here has KPIs in their organization? Okay, I feel sorry for you. And the reason being is we used to have KPIs and we had pages and pages, literally millions of Confluence pages with goals and red, yellow, green, and it just became this hugely cumbersome exercise. Not even a good exercise. It actually became quite a demoralizing exercise. And so we decided to move to OKRs. Now, we didn't create OKRs. Google had been running with this for years. If you've not run them before, really simple flow. Set big, hairy, audacious objectives and get those right. What does it look like? What does success look like in 12 or 18 months? And specifically, how can you phrase that in the eyes of the customer that you're trying to delight? And then what we do as a team is have that rich discussion of what are the key results, what are the things we can do to build confidence that we're making progress in the right direction. Confidence and progress, not perfection, not indicators that tell me that I did 40 things this week, but the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. And the reason we did this was it was starting to get really painful managing KPIs across a growing organization. So if you think about the health monitor, this helps 3 specific areas on the health monitor. Firstly, this idea of value and metrics. This is how our individual teams, those 390 teams, understand what's the value they're delivering and how can they measure their success. What we look for there are lead indicators and lag indicators. How can I get confidence, but also what's the experience for the end customer? That outcome normally occurs after the project has shipped. You know a team struggling with value and metrics if they high five when they ship. because they completely forget what's due to happen in 2, 3, or 4 months when the customer is getting the value from that. So they ship and forget. It also helps with shared understanding. In our first 100 health monitor sessions with teams across Atlassian, the #1 area we struggled with was shared understanding. Our teams knew what they were doing, and they did not have a clue why. If you want autonomous teams, they have to know why they are doing what they are doing. What happens is when you lose that why, when you lose that autonomy, you stop listening to your customers, you stop listening to your stakeholders, and you ship regardless. You also stop course correcting because you're not listening anymore. You're not learning, and you're not improving your velocity along the way, which is why velocity is in there. How do we continually learn and improve as we iterate? So OKRs are incredibly simple. As a team, we don't do this as an individual. I don't do this alone as a leader. I gather my team normally on a Confluence page or a Trello board, and we have that rich discussion. Now, I'll confess, I always have the temptation, it'd be a damn sight quicker if I just did these and emailed them to the team. I promise you, every time, that'd be quicker. It would also be a complete waste of time, because me broadcasting what I think the team should be doing is not an engaging way of working. And so we do this as a team exercise when we start a project. What are those big, hairy, audacious objectives? And how can we pick key results? Every time I do this session, I'm amazed at how wrong I can be. As a grown man who has survived to the age of 40, I am still incapable of getting OKRs right for my team. And that makes complete sense. Because the cognitively diverse team that I have around me together is always going to come up with better objectives than me alone. It's a very humbling exercise. And then what we do is, whether these be on a yearly or a quarterly basis, we rate them as we go along. So it's probably no surprise to you that we've actually introduced this as a Confluence template. That template exists in server and cloud for the measly price of absolutely nothing. So this is available to you right now in Confluence Server and Confluence Cloud. It is a truly collaborative exercise in setting audacious goals for your team and getting aligned behind why are we even doing what we're doing, and genuinely, what does success look like? We've also, if there's anyone in the room that doesn't use Confluence and uses things like Microsoft Word, I hear that's still around, we've built this as a generic template that you can copy, cut, and paste into any archaic system that isn't Atlassian. And that's because we want you to unleash your potential, whether you use our products or not. So OKRs are a great way of getting that alignment. So you're aligned, and that's awesome, and then you're like, cool, we can just go and do our work. Except what we found is that we're all aligned on the goal, and we all had completely different ways of getting there. So we work with these cognitively diverse teams. If you think about our product teams, we work on the triad: strong engineering, strong design, strong product management, working together. And that gives you a natural tension. It can often look very scrappy, but that friction is essentially very, very valuable. And so what we developed was, how can we take those objectives and key results, but get a common view of how we get there? We know what the end destination looks like, but there's still like a million ways of getting there. And so we developed something called the project poster. Imagine the project requirements document never existed because it's a terrible document. And it was replaced with something collaborative where you all got to take part. This is it. So we created it because even though we had alignment on why we were doing what we were doing, we still had very different ways of getting there. So again, helps two main areas. First of all, internally for the team, helps build their shared understanding. But it also has great value for all the other teams that we're dependent on. So just think about those 390 teams again. If I'm working in one team, how do I communicate to those other 389 teams what I'm doing? We use this as a one-pager to say, here's what I'm working on. Only contact me and talk to me if you think there might be some reliance, some synergies we can work on, or some dependencies. If you're just generally interested in my project, read this and never speak to me. Now, that sounds a bit harsh, but what it does is it increases the signal of meaningful conversations and stops that hand-to-hand combat of being pinged by people going, what are you working on? Oh, why are you doing that? Oh, that's nice. And then walking away. That hand-to-hand combat feels busy, but you've not really moved anything anywhere. So the project poster is like a band poster. It lives throughout the life of the project. We tend to do it at the very start of the project, and then every couple of weeks we revisit it. And it essentially asks you 4 very simple questions. What's the problem you're solving? What is the impact of that problem? What is your proposed solution? And what are your assumptions? The assumptions are the things you go and validate and learn as the project evolves. Sounds really simple, really common sense. So we did an experiment about a year ago. We had 7 highly intelligent people from the Confluence team. And they were all working on the exact same project. And I gave them a blank piece of paper each. And I said, do this exercise. Gave them 5 minutes. And they all celebrated when they did the reveal because they all had the same solution. And every single one of them was solving a different problem. And so what we realized was, at one extreme, we had someone who believed the problem was around growth. And so their view was we were going to spend more money to try and grow. And at the other extreme, someone thought that the whole point of the project was to save money. And I'm like, this is really cool because you're going to net off and we're going to deliver nothing. This is going to be like mediocre, but it's going to be on time. And so this idea of the project poster is, how do we get behind that path to get there? This isn't a static document because that path is not defined. The inherent uncertainty and volatility that we have in our work means that I can't predict what's going to happen in 6, 9, or 12 months. So this enables us to be nimble. It enables us to say we're probably wrong, but how do we get just enough information to start? How do we get just enough information to continue? How do we get just enough information to complete? And iterate on that as we go along. Again, no surprise that the project poster has been made a Confluence blueprint, again, available in server and cloud. And these are living, breathing documents where we collaborate, we iterate, we comment. And it looks quite violent when it's happening because people bring their best selves to these discussions. When you have these discussions early, it's an investment, not a tax. It genuinely will save you time later on. For me, it's been quite profound to be involved in these and realize that if we get things right early, it involves anyone saying, I told you so later on. But it's way more effective for the team. So we normally start these early on in the envision stage. It's normally our designers and product managers working on them. But like I say, it evolves throughout the life of the project, a living, breathing document. Now, it wouldn't be a tech presentation without an acronym. I know you all love acronyms, so we're going to give you one here. DAISY. Does anyone work in an organization that struggles with decision-making? Is anyone like a whiz at decision-making? Is there like a decision-making guru here? No one is willing to own up. Oh, confidence there. So decision-making for us was something we were naturally good at when we were small, and then suddenly just became this massive burden overnight. To the point where everyone's like, oh, decision-making, we need a decision. And all that was happening was everything was going up the chain of command. And we don't actually work that way. We're a very lateral, nimble organization. I actually got invited into a conversation. Are there any architects in the room? Just before I offend anyone. Oh, so you're a great decisions and you're an architect. I'm going to have to call bullshit on one of those. Those two things don't live in the same person. Okay, so let me tell you the story. We had a group of 17 architects, clearly the most intelligent people I've ever come across in my entire life, like 17 born geniuses in a room. So I had imposter syndrome at first, because I was like, I have no right to be here. And then I realized why I was there. They can have endless, and I mean endless discussion. Like rabbit holes that rabbits don't know about can be found by architects. And so they were having these wonderful elongated discussion. There was face scratching and head tapping and everyone wondering what if. And they got to the end of a 90-minute meeting, like 17 really expensive and like highly demanded people. And they were like, and I was like, what are the actions? Like, well, what's come out of this meeting? They're like, well, we're going to meet again next week and have the same discussion. I was like, wow, that is impressive inertia that you've just demonstrated there. And so what we found was we were just getting stalled with decision making. And what was happening was we were letting time make the decision. And let me let you into a secret, time does not make good decisions. What happens is when time makes a decision, you have to react because the stimulus is right in front of you. When you make decisions, you get to respond. You feel like you have options. And so that's what we've done with the DAISY play. Not how can we get consensus, because we often disagree and commit, but how can we drive faster decisions even if they're wrong? Because we will learn more from a fast, wrong decision. So again, helps 3 areas, decision-making being one of them, that trade-off between short-term and long-term, shared understanding, but also balanced team. One of the things we found and the reasons we were struggling with decision-making was no one knew who the decision-maker was. So we just all sat around going, that was a good meeting. And then everyone else leaves going, why didn't Dom make that decision? I had no idea I was making that decision. I thought you were accountable. And so calling out that explicit accountability really helps. So the very first thing we did was kind of understand what is the decision we're trying to make. And the first column we've got here was quite amusing when we first created this. So it was like, you've put do nothing, and that's clearly not a decision. And we're like, no, it is. Doing nothing is an active decision, often that you will make passively, but it's an active decision. And then what we say to our teams is understand the options available to you. Discuss those trade-offs. Understand the rationale behind what you might do, pros and cons. And do that exercise before you try and make the decision. The next part is the dicey part, which is who's the driver, who's the approver, who's consulted, and who's informed. So what happens in Atlassian, because we've got a whole lot of high-performing, high-achieving people, everyone has an opinion. Wow, like every single person has an opinion. So what happens is every person who's informed thinks they should be consulted. And what that does is it drives the decision-making process so slow. So we're explicit. Consulted means that I care about your opinion because you're probably a subject matter expert on this. Informed means this decision will impact you, but I don't actually care what you think. It sets the expectation ahead that I will inform you of the decision and you can raise your voice, but we're probably going to do it regardless because making that decision and progressing it will enable us to learn more than endlessly debating it in the same room. It's just the nature of the work we're doing. And so in this example, in every example, we set a very clear rule. There is only ever one driver, one approver. This view that a committee or a guild or a subcommittee or a forum can make decisions. Consensus doesn't make good decisions. Certainly not when you're working in the tech industry. So again, we've built this as a Confluence template. You will see hundreds of these in our Confluence instance. And one of the things I love is that our daces are always open. So everyone can see the decisions we're making, the rationale behind them, and when we get them wrong, we document the lessons learned as well. It all stays in this rich text environment. So the playbook we actually launched, we'd been running for years, but we launched externally. So there's 3 health monitors in there, one for project teams, one for leadership teams, and one for service teams. And the reason there's a health monitor for each is those 3 teams act subtly differently. Leadership teams tend to be longer thinking, strategy, vision, inspiration, mentoring, and coaching. Project teams, cross-functional, execution, common backlog. And service teams often work on a queue and triage. And the idea behind a service team is how can you prevent as well as cure. As well as that, we've documented 27 plays. These haven't been written by a thought leader, an agile coach, or a design thinking guru. They've been written by Atlassian teams, and they are used by Atlassian teams every single day. If you want to know more, actually on the homepage, you can add your email. About every 6 weeks, we send out a newsletter, not only telling stories about the changes we've made, but telling stories about how we've used the playbook, things we've learned, and also we get stories solicited by customers on a regular basis. We firmly believe that sharing is caring. This is not a secret sauce unless you choose to apply it. Just knowing about it alone does not make you any smarter. Taking action on it does. And that's why on your seat, you will see a health monitor pack. So we've packaged up the health monitor when you came back in after your cookie and coffee. The health monitor pack has got like playing poker cards, and it's got a description of how to run a health monitor. All I want you to do at some point in the next week is sit down with your team, close your mouth, open your ears, and listen for that amazing gift of feedback. Because every time I do a health monitor with my teams and I do less hippo and more elephant, I learn infinitely more than me just telling the team how awesome I am and how awesome they are. It's about driving continual improvement for us. So that's available for you to use now. We genuinely believe in unleashing the potential in every team, and we believe we can do that through improving human to human, how we work together across cultures, across geos, across distributed teams, and across tools. So give it a try, have some fun with it, let us know how you get on, and have fun unleashing the potential in your teams. Thank you very much.